Chapter 2 of Allan and the Holy Flower. This recording is in the public domain. Allan and the Holy Flower by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 2. The Auction Room. I do not think that this conversation about the Pongo savages who were said to worship a gorilla and a golden flower was renewed until we reached my house at Durban. Thither, of course, I took Mr. Charles Scroope, and thither also came Brother John, who, as bedroom accommodation was lacking, pitched his tent in the garden. One night we sat on the step smoking. Brother John's only concession to human weakness was that he smoked. He drank no wine or spirits. He never ate meat unless he was obliged, but I rejoice to say that he smoked cigars, like most Americans, when he could get them. "John," said I have been thinking over that yarn of yours, and have come to one or two conclusions." "What may they be, Allan?" "The first is that you were a great donkey not to get more out of Kalubi when you had the chance." "Agreed, Allan, but amongst other things I am a doctor, and the operation was uppermost in my mind." "The second is that I believe this Kalubi had charge of the gorilla god, as no doubt you've guessed; also that it was the gorilla which bit off his finger." "Why so?" "Because I have heard of great monkeys called sokos that live in Central East Africa, which are said to bite off men's toes and fingers. I have heard, too, that they are very like gorillas." "Now you mention it, so have I, Allan. Indeed, once I saw a soko, though some way off, a huge brown ape which stood on its hind legs and drummed upon its chest with its fists. I didn't see it for long, because I ran away." "The third is that this yellow orchid would be worth a great deal of money if one could dig it up and take it to England." "I think I told you, Allan, that I valued it at £20,000, so that conclusion of yours is not original." "The fourth is that I should like to dig up that orchid and get a share of the £20,000." Brother John became intensely interested. "Ah!" he said, "now we are getting to the point. I have been wondering how long it would take you to see it, Allan, but if you are slow you are sure." "The fifth," I went on, "that such an expedition to succeed would need a great deal of money, more than you or I could find. Partners would be wanted, active or sleeping, but partners with cash." Brother John looked towards the window of the room in which Charlie Scroope was in bed, for being still weak he went to rest early. "No," I said, "he's had enough of Africa, and you told me yourself that it will be 2 years before he is really strong again. Also there's a lady in this case. Now listen. I have taken it on myself to write to that lady, whose address I found out while he didn't know what he was saying. I have said that he was dying, but that I hoped he might live. Meanwhile, I added, I thought you would like to know that he did nothing but rave of her, also that he was a hero, with a big H twice underlined. My word, I did lay it on about the hero business with a spoon, a real hotel gravy spoon. If Charlie Scroope knows himself again when he sees my description of him, well, I'm a Dutchman, that's all. The letter caught the last mail, and will, I hope, reach the lady in due course. Now listen again. Scroope wants me to go to England with him to look after him on the voyage. That's what he says. What he means is that he hopes I might put in a word for him with the lady if I should chance to be introduced to her. He offers to pay all my expenses and to give me something for my loss of time. So as I haven't seen England since I was 3 years old, I think I'll take the chance." Brother John's face fell. "Then what about the expedition, Allan?" he asked. "This is the 1st of November," I answered, "and the wet season in those parts begins about now and lasts till April. So it would be no use trying to visit your Pongo friends till then, which gives me plenty of time to go to England and come out again. If you'll trust that flower to me I'll take it with me. Perhaps I might be able to find someone who would be willing to put down money on the chance of getting the plant on which it grew. Meanwhile you are welcome to this house if you care to stay here." "Thank you, Allan, but I can't sit still for so many months. I'll go somewhere and come back." He paused, and a dreamy look came into his dark eyes, then went on. "You see, brother, it is laid on me to wander and wander through all this great land until I know." "Until you know what?" I asked sharply. He pulled himself together with a jerk, as it were, and answered with a kind of forced carelessness. "Until I know every inch of it, of course." There are lots of tribes I have not yet visited." "Including the Pongo," I said. "By the way, if I can get the money together for a trip up there, I suppose you mean to come too, don't you? If not, the thing's off as far as I am concerned. You see, I am reckoning on you to get us through the Mazitu and into Pongo-land by help of your friends." "Certainly I mean to come. In fact, if you don't go, I shall start alone. I intend to explore Pongo-land, even if I never come out of it again." Once more I looked at him as I answered: "You are ready to risk a great deal for a flower, John, or are you looking for more than a flower? If so, I hope you will tell me the truth." This I said, as I was aware that Brother John had a foolish objection to uttering, or even acting, lies. "Well, Allan, as you put it like that, the truth is that I heard something more about the Pongo than I told you up country. It was after I operated on that Kalubi, or I would have tried to get in alone. But this I could not do then, as I have said." "What did you hear?" "I heard that they have a white goddess as well as a white god." "Well, what of that? A female gorilla, I suppose." "Nothing, except that goddesses have always interested me. Good night." "You are an odd fish," I remarked after him, "and what is more, you have got something up your sleeve. Well, I'll have it down one day. Meanwhile, I wonder whether the whole thing is a lie. No, not a lie, an hallucination. It can't be, because of that orchid. No one can explain away the orchid. A queer people, these Pongo, with their white god and goddesses and their holy flower. But after all, Africa is a land of queer people, and of queer gods too. And now the story shifts away to England. Don't be afraid, my adventurous reader, if I ever have one. It is coming back to Africa again in a very few pages. Mr. Charles Scroope and I left Durban a day or two after my last conversation with Brother John. At Cape Town we caught the mail, a wretched little boat you would think it now, which after a long and wearisome journey at length landed us safe at Plymouth. Our companions on that voyage were very dull. I have forgotten most of them, but one lady I do remember. I imagine that she must have commenced life as a barmaid, for she had that orthodox tow hair and blousy appearance. At any rate, she was the wife of a wine merchant who had made a fortune at the Cape. Unhappily, however, she had contracted too great a liking for her husband's wares, and after dinner was apt to become talkative. For some reason or other she took a particular aversion to me. Oh! I can see her now, seated in that salon with the oil lamp swinging over her head. She always chose the position under the oil lamp because it showed off her diamonds, and I can hear her too. "Don't bring any of your elephant hunting manners here, Mr. Allan," with an emphasis on Allan, "Quatermain. They are not fit for polite society. You should go and brush your hair, Mr. Quatermain." I may explain that my hair sticks up naturally. Then would come her little husband's horrified "Hush, hush, you are quite insulting, my dear." Oh! why do I remember it all after so many years when I have even forgotten the people's names? One of those little things that stick in the mind, I suppose. The island of Ascension, where we called, sticks also with its long swinging rollers breaking in white foam, its bare mountain peak capped with green, and the turtles in the ponds. Those poor turtles! We brought two of them home, and I used to look at them lying on their backs in the forecastle, flapping their fins feebly. One of them died, and I got the butcher to save me the shell. Afterwards I gave it as a wedding present to Mr. and Mrs. Scroope, nicely polished and lined. I meant it for a work basket, and was overwhelmed with confusion when some silly lady said at the marriage, and in the hearing of the bride and bridegroom, that it was the most beautiful cradle she had ever seen. Of course, like a fool, I tried to explain, whereon everybody tittered. But why do I write of such trifles that have nothing to do with my story? I mentioned that I had ventured to send a letter to Miss Margaret Manners about Mr. Charles Scroope, in which I said incidentally that if the hero should happen to live, I should probably bring him home by the next mail. Well, we got into Plymouth about 8 o'clock in the morning on a mild November day, and shortly afterwards a tug arrived to take off the passengers and mails, also some cargo. I, being an early riser, watched it come, and saw upon the deck a stout lady wrapped in furs, and by her side a very pretty, fair-haired young woman clad in a neat serge dress and a pork-pie hat. Presently a steward told me that someone wished to speak to me in the saloon. I went and found these